Welcome to Deconstruction Gaming's Triple XP game analysis video. In this video, I'm going to explore how long it takes to level in Star Wars The Old Republic with boosted experience. This started as a challenge during a double XP event. I wondered if I could level from 1 to 75 doing only the class missions. So I started looking at all the different ways you could buff your experience, and wanted to stack all these up just to see how fast we could level. In talking with some friends, some secondary challenges started to emerge, such as could I do it in 8 hours? How fast can you actually level? And is doing only the class missions faster than doing all the missions? Let's take a look. So I set up two characters with the following XP boosts. We start off with our normal experience, and then we did this during a double XP event. I also have a set of armor that gives a 50% bonus. We use the consumable buff that gives a 25% bonus. I was in a guild that gives a 15% bonus, and they had a guild ship bonus of 7%. If you add all these together, it gives us a 297% XP bonus, so nearly triple. For class and exploration experience, we also get an additional 30% on top of that, taking us to 327%. So I set off to test these challenges. I created two playthrough video series, one doing all the missions and one doing only the class missions to see what the differences would be. You can find playlists for both of those series on my channel. In order to quantify some of this, I had to collect some information. The first thing I needed to know is how much XP does it take to level. I had trouble finding this on the internet, so I just went through and collected this in-game. Then I collected how much XP we gained every 15 minutes for both playthroughs, and I also collected how much time it took to reach each level for both playthroughs. Now this information was collected through October 12th, 2020, so all the XP numbers and everything is accurate as of that date. Since this is a game that could change, have expansions or updates, these could change in the future, but as of October 12th, 2020, everything here was accurate. While working through both of these playthroughs, I collected all of the data and then mapped it into Excel. Alright, so let's take a look at the raw numeric data. One of the first things I did is I started to try to map out just how much bonus XP I'm going to get. During a double XP event, some of these numbers don't match up to the percentages, so in the future I may actually do a video on what all this means and how it actually maps out. You're going to see that I played around with numbers for a long time, doing all kinds of different calculations to try to find out what that was going to be. During a double XP event, you are actually getting more than what the numbers say. So for instance, the 50% armor tends to be more of a 66% bonus because of the way it's calculated. In the future, I may mess around and try to do this in a non-XP event. If that's something that you're interested in, let me know down below. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we collected. So the first thing I did is I went through and I mapped out how much XP it takes to reach each level. So to get from level 1 to level 2, it's 805. To get from level 2 to level 3, and so on down the line. This was the information I could find on the internet, and this is what I actually experienced inside of the game. Now, a couple of things you're going to notice. One, it has changed over time. So it takes a lot less experience to get to level 50 than it used to. 6.6 million versus 8.7 million. The other thing you're going to notice is you get some weird spiky numbers here. We're going to take a look at that. And that the change in XP from level to level actually jumps up after level 50. So we actually calculated some more information here. This is every 15 minutes I took an XP reading. The ones marked in yellow are estimates because I didn't actually have the data. So what I did is I looked at the screen, looked at the experience bar, looked at the total experience, and did a calculation that got me close. I have found I usually get within a few thousand when I do it this way. This represents all missions, so it took us 7.5 hours to get through all the missions. This is the same data for the class missions run. Again, took us 10.5 hours to get through that, so already we can see the XP is not going as fast. I also collected how much time it took to get to each level. So this represents how many hours, minutes, and seconds it takes to get to each level, and I also marked how many episodes it took. So again, this is doing all the missions. You're going to notice how many levels we are getting through per episode. Looks like 2 is our least amount, and these early levels obviously went very, very quickly. You'll notice here that there's actually a 1 second mark. This is just to make the data work. This is an area where I actually jumped up 2 levels in turning in a mission. We'll look at the same data in the class missions. You can see that thing happened a lot more here. Same thing's going on here. How many hours, minutes, and seconds did it take us to get to each level, and which episode did that take place in? Obviously, this run through was longer, so it's more episodes, and it's pretty clear to see where our slowdown happens. A lot of one level per episode things happening towards the second half of this one. Again, this is a lot of data, so the next thing I tried to do is let's make a visual representation. So we created a whole bunch of charts in order to analyze and look at what's going on. So let's take a look at these in more detail now. First, let's look at the XP charts. So this is just an overall progression of the XP curve. As you can see, this follows a pretty standard exponential growth curve, and it even makes it hard to see those little bumps we are getting at level 51 and level 71. This one represents how much XP it takes per level. In this one, you can actually see two different things. One, you can see the different bumps that we're getting at level 51 and 71 as the expansions and the game has changed. You can also see the difference in slope of the first 50 levels compared to anything that comes after. So this just kind of gives us an idea of how much XP it's going to take to level. Now, obviously, the game gives us more XP as we get higher in level, so it tends to balance out. If we look at this from the standpoint of how much it changes, how much XP goes up from level to level, we can actually see the same kind of thing. Again, we have our two spikes, and we see a higher rate going on after level 50 than we do before level 50. And this actually tracks the change of changes. This one's a little deceptive, and you got these big giant spikes, but you can see that the XP rates recover. So while we go up on one, the change of the changes compensate for that in the second one. If we remove those big spikes out though, you can see that there's kind of a pretty standard pattern here. You've got some oddness in a couple of places in how the XP is calculated, but for the most part, it's a pretty even line and pretty straightforward. You will see though, after level 50, there is much more of a pattern than pre-level 50. All right, let's move on to the XP per 15 minutes. So this represents both playthroughs, the orange being the all missions playthrough and the more yellow being the class missions playthrough. And this represents every 15 minutes, how much XP did I observe? You're going to notice a couple of things early on. They actually are pretty straightforward, but they do tend to break apart as the playthrough goes forward. In the all missions between hour 2 and 2.5, that's about where we were in the Black Sun territory. And we did some backtracking so you can kind of see that there's a dip in the XP rates there. For the class missions, you can actually see at 8.5 to 9. That's where we were at Coruscant and the start of Corellia. So you can see that at 8.5 and 9, we've actually got a little bit of a thing going on there. At 9.5 to 10, that was also the final story area on Corellia, which takes some time to get through. So you see the XP rates drop there as well. Another thing that you'll see in the class missions versus all missions is between hours 3 and 3.5, we were at different spots. That's really where you start to see the divergent of the XP rate gains. In the class mission, we are starting Tatooine, and this is kind of where the planets start to get bigger. In the all missions, we're just finishing up Coruscant, so we're not even on Terrace yet. So if we add a linear trend line here, you can see that the all missions definitely outpace the class mission in overall rate of gain. Although again, right about that 3-hour mark, there was a lot of consistency there. If we look at this as an overall rate of gain, you start to see some of the same patterns. At the 3.5-hour mark, they really do start to diverge. Again, this is where the all missions was at the end of Coruscant, whereas the class missions is into Tatooine through Alderaan and the Justice. So the planets are getting a whole lot bigger there. So another little data anomaly you'll see is hours 5.5 to 6, you're going to see that there's a flattening of the all missions XP rate gain. We were in the third area of Terrace here and just didn't turn in a lot of missions, getting ready to start kind of the final push through the planet. If we go ahead and map on the how much XP did we get per 15 minutes to the overall rates of gain, you can see the correlation here. At about hour 3.5, the orange line pretty much stays above the yellow line down there at the bottom, outside of that little Terrace anomaly, and that is reflected in the overall growth curves. So this is how much XP we were getting every 15 minutes, but how fast did we actually level? How long did it take to get from level to level? So here we're actually going to look at time to level. Now on these charts, a lower number is actually better. So a lower vertical means you are doing something faster. Again, you can kind of see the same pattern, the orange color being the all missions, the yellow color being the class missions, And in general, the all missions falls below the class missions. Now, you're definitely seeing a zigzag pattern here, and this is due to the nature of the data collection. So what you tend to see is we turn in a bunch of missions and then we go and run a bunch of missions. We turn in a bunch of missions and we go and run a bunch of missions. And this actually creates spikes in the amount of XP we're getting and spikes in how fast we're actually going to level in those areas. The zigzag pattern is definitely more pronounced than the all missions version because we're turning in usually 2, 3, 4, 5 missions at a time and getting huge spikes there. So when it spikes up, that means we were between missions, and when it spikes down, that means we turned in a whole bunch of missions. A couple of things to note here. If you look at the class mission line between levels 24 and 33, there's a bit of a spike in time. This is the time we were leaving Ord Mantell and getting ready to go through Fleet and move on, so not a lot of XP was gained there. Also in the class missions run 69 to 73, you see another giant spike of time. This was on Corellia when we were wrapping that up and kind of wrapping up the Eric Jorgen quest line and different things like that, so we weren't gaining XP quite as fast. This does get a little bit messy, so let's straighten out our trend lines a little bit. Same kind of pattern here. You can see that the white line is the trend line for the all missions, the yellow line is the trend line for the class missions, and we are gaining levels faster in the all missions version. This represents the total amount of time. Again, you can kind of start to see some patterns here. The first one is up to about level 20, very, very similar. They're actually within a few minutes of each other through level 20. And this starts to expand a little bit up to about level 45. At level 45, the two different run-throughs were about 20 minutes apart in leveling speed. From level 45 on, though, you can definitely see that this grows out. If you think about the end of the series, you're looking at the end of this being about 3 hours different. So between level 45 and 75 is where you really started to see the class missions lag behind the all missions in rate of experience gain. So as we bring this in, we can start to look at it and try to figure out why does this actually happen. The biggest thing is in the all missions, we never got past Nar Shaddaa. So we stayed on a lot of very small planets, which means you can get from place to place quicker. In the class missions, when we hit level 45, we are kind of in the Tatooine spot. So we're starting to hit some of the bigger planets, and it just took longer to travel and get the missions done on these larger planets. And I think that continues through all the way through the series. You can definitely see a slowness to that. So if you look at the line down there at the bottom, you can actually see the per level times. The yellow line is for the most part higher than the orange line, representing it taking more time for each level. Again, the end result ended up being about 3 hours difference. So did I succeed in meeting my challenges? So the first one, can I level from level 1 to 75 using only class missions? Technically, we did not. Technically, we had to actually use Ilum to finish up the last 3 levels. So we got close, but didn't quite make it. Now, I would argue that we were going all the way to level 75. Corellia was designed to get you to level 50. So while we did out-level the game, we didn't actually make it to level 75. Can I get to level 75 using only class missions in 8 hours? No. It took 10.5 hours using the only class missions, although it did only take 7.5 hours using the all missions. So I can level to 75 in less than 8 hours, but we had to use all the missions to do it. If I wasn't doing video work and different things like that, I think this number could actually get faster. So how fast can you level using story missions? I think you could possibly get under 7, maybe 6.5 if you just sat down and ground through it. When I was doing my playthrough, I was doing a lot of video overhead work, testing, data collection, and all that kind of stuff, which adds time to the playthrough. Also made a few mistakes in the videos. If you've watched the videos, I had to backtrack or I'd mess something up. So I think 6.5 hours is definitely doable, maybe even down to 6 hours, just going through and doing the missions as fast as you can. And finally, is doing class missions faster than all missions? It is not. It's actually 3 hours longer. And this surprised me because we did have the 30% bonus on class missions, which makes our rate gain faster. But as the planets got larger and we started to travel more, I think that actually hurt us. The compactness of the beginning planets and the density of all those missions and turning them all in really did make a difference. So what conclusions can we draw from these two experiments? One, triple XP is absolutely crazy. In the all missions playthrough, the number of levels we were gaining was insane. The fact that we got to level 75 before we even got halfway through Nar Shaddaa really shows that there is tons of experience available. I believe you can comfortably play through only the class missions and keep up with leveling during a double XP event. If you've maybe not played a particular class story and you want to check it out but don't want to do all the planets and side missions, you can actually stay leveled up. I even think that you could keep up a nice level pace without the double XP event if you stack some of these other things. Definitely hitting level 50 by Corellia, and if you add a few things in like heroics and flashpoints and different things like that, you would gain plenty of experience to keep you on pace. Another option could be using the class story missions and the planet story missions. This would give you plenty of XP even without a double XP event. So if you wanted to play through a new class story mission, but didn't want to see a lot of the duplicated or content that you've seen before, it is actually possible to stay leveled up for the planets as you work your way through just the class missions. If you want to check out the video series that created all of this, there is a setup video that I have that shows how I set up for the double XP event. Also, there are 2 video playlists on my channels that have the all missions and the class missions playlists put together. The all missions is 15 half-hour episodes, the class missions is 22 half-hour episodes, and it shows where and how I gained all of this experience. I want to thank you for watching. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe, and look for more game analysis videos in the future.